Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to episode 149 of Making It with me, your host, Terry Woolman. You can find all of our episodes on entertalkmedia.com, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or just go to my website, terrywoolman.com/podcast. I really appreciate you joining us every week, and I encourage you to stay mindful and safe as we work together as a community to get through this global health pandemic. I'd like to share with you my intention that inspires this podcast. Time passes quickly, and I've learned that we should do what's in our hearts and do it well without apologies or excuses. I encourage you to create your life and art in your own unique way and express your artistry with joy and abandon. Be willing to work uncompromisingly for what you believe in. Success will have a better way of finding you when you live your life with integrity, focus, and passion. Be selfish with your discipline and selfless in your performance. And don't forget to have fun along the way. My guest today is percussionist Ron Powell. Let me tell you about Ron. Ron Powell is an accomplished musician, clinician, author, and educator with over 40 years of performance experience. In addition to touring with Sergio Mendes for 20 years, as well as with Kenny G and Diana Ross for the past 30 years, Ron has recorded and performed with renowned artists including Black Eyed Peas, Santana, Madonna, Mariah Carey, Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind & Fire, Herbie Hancock, Justin Timberlake, George Duke, George Benson, Sheena, Easton, Josh Groban, Lee Ritenour, Barry White, brand new Heavies, Gloria, Estefan, Boyz II Men, Annie Lennox, Pattie, Austin, the Four Tops, Poncho, Sanchez, Jeffery, Osborne, Donna Summers, Peebo Bryson, Donny Osmond, the Supremes, the Commodores, Lou Rawls, India Ree, Michael Bolton, Patti LaBelle, David Cassidy, Faith Hill, Al Jarreau, Boy George, Merv Griffin, Paula Abdul, Najee, and Cirque du Soleil. Ron has also played for the American Music and Grammy Awards, Smokey Robinson's Motown Revue, The Late Show with David Letterman, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Johnny Carson, American Idol, and has also been a member in my band for many years. Ron Powell, welcome to Making It.
Wow. Well, hello. It's a pleasure being here. And that was quite an intro. So thank you for letting me be here. And it's a real pleasure.
You're very welcome, and I'm very happy to see you. You know, the list is longer than that, and typically I don't read that long of a list in an intro, but there's a reason that I did. So let me just start with that. I mean, it is kind of overwhelming in a way, isn't it? Or just sort of mind-boggling a little bit when you just hear somebody read the crawl on your life?
Yeah, I don't hear people read it that often. So yeah, it is kind of like, wow, wait. But I feel very fortunate that I've been able to play with so many different artists. And I feel fortunate, but for younger people listening, people getting into the industry, I want to say it's not by accident. Early in my career, I devised a plan on how I was going to be successful at this. And basically what I did was I wrote out a list of who I felt I needed to play with. And then because I had a direction to go in, that's what I pursued. And so every band that I tried to play with, pretty much I've been able to do. So I feel, like I said, I feel very fortunate, but at the same time, it wasn't by accident.
I didn't know that. And I think that was really smart of you to do. How old were you when you made that list? Was it when you were in college, or did you start when you were a kid just thinking about that?
I got out of high school and I moved to California from Philadelphia. And then I started going to college here. But as soon as I got here to California is when I decided that I was going to try to pursue playing percussion. And so that's when I put the list together. And that's when I started filling in that list. And then I went to college afterwards. And I actually never finished college because I was too busy touring.
Before you decided to focus on being a percussionist, what was your focus? I know you studied music theory and you had a broad education, but were you a drummer? Were you a guitar player?
No.
What were you doing?
Well, I started off playing cornet, which is trumpet. Yeah, back in elementary school, and like I said, I grew up in Philadelphia, and we weren't rich, so they gave me the cornet, they gave me the horn at school, and I played it for like about a year, and then one day my instructor told me, "You really need to clean that thing," but he didn't tell me how. So I took it home, I took it apart, and I put it in the bathtub. and then when I put it back together, it didn't work because all the pads were wet. But at the time, I didn't realize that. So I thought I had broken it. And then I was thinking, oh man, my parents have to pay for this thing. So I went back to school, put it on the top shelf, and told the instructor, I don't think I want to play anymore. And so that ended my horn career. And then, unfortunately, in the Philadelphia public school system, they actually cut out music programs. So that wasn't my started to the industry. I just started playing congas because I heard on the radio, I heard this song, Crystal Blue Persuasion.
Right, Tommy James and the Shondells. Yeah.
And it had this beautiful bongos in the middle. And when I heard that, it was like, what is that? I've got to do that. And so after hearing that song, I went back home and asked people, well, what is this, blah, blah, blah. And I figured out that I could make that sound by playing on the flour and sugar containers in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So literally when my mother would go to work, I'd get home from school, I would dump the flour on the table, dump the sugar on the table, and play the flour and sugar container like bongos. And then up until about 6 o'clock when my mother's would come home, and then I would scoop the flour back into the flour, sugar back, put them back.
Clean the kitchen.
Yeah. Right. And so that's how I started playing that. And then I didn't really start studying theory and music until after I was already working. So it was kind of backwards. And I did that out of necessity because once I started working, I got in these situations where I realized, oh gosh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to read these charts. So then it's like, man, you got to get your stuff together. So
right.
So that's when I, really went back to school and really started studying music theory.
And I would imagine that your early cornet training, you had some basic reading skills from that carried over into your percussion reading, or no? Did you feel like not really? You were starting from scratch?
Not at all. It was really starting all over. It just really had nothing to do with it. And even when I started studying music later, once I moved to LA, my thought process wasn't like with the horn. It was more about melody. So when I started studying, once I came to LA, I was really just making sure that rhythmically I knew what was happening on the music. So, and it wasn't until years later that I went back and started studying ballad percussion and melody and harmony and stuff. So I was really just concerned with timing, rhythms, making sure I was reading the charts right, stuff like that.
Thanks for answering that. I want to get back to my intro and your long list of credits that I read. And the reason that I included so many of them, even though I did edit out quite a few, is because it leads me to a question that I find really fascinating about you, that I know just on a personal level, is that you pride yourself in this idea of getting a real job. This was always something very important to you. And I want you to just elaborate on that so our listeners can understand that side of you, because I think it's so fascinating with the pedigree that you have, this beautiful collection of life experience that you've had working with all these artists. You still have this other work ethic instilled in you. So can you just share that?
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, things have changed, but the way that started was even during high school. I always just felt the need to be in control of what was happening in my life. So I would always go and get a job. And then once I moved to California, and even when I was working as a professional musician touring around the world, in the beginning, I never thought of the music as my life career. It was something that I was doing. I was making money at it. It was going great. But the day that I would get home, my goal was to get a job, a real job. And usually by the next day, I would have a real job. So I've been a fashion model, a truck driver, office factory, all kinds of jobs, because I felt that was how a guy was supposed to become a man, go get a real job.
Is that what your parents taught you? Or is that
No,
just something you just thought on your own?
That's just something that I picked up. And my parents have always been very supportive with the music. And, they never even said, go get a real job or stop doing it on the plane. They just were always really supportive. But I just felt that I needed to do that. And I did that for about 10 years while I'm doing major tours around the world. I did that. And one day I was at a guitar center doing a percussion clinic for Latin percussion. And I was talking to the audience, talking to all the guys in the audience, and I said something, and I listened to myself. And what I said to them was, at some point, you have to stop doing your job and turn it into a career. And instead of spending 40 hours a week doing a job for somebody else, spend that 40 hours on yourself in your career. And for some reason, at that point, I heard myself. And that was the last time that I went and got a real job.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was in like 1985. And luckily, I don't think I've had a month off since then.
I have a few friends like yourself that have had a non-stop career, without having to go and get a side hustle. Mm-hmm. You're married, you have grown kids, like you didn't forget to have a family along the way. And you still, I marvel at your career because you've always been traveling.
Yeah.
As long as I've known you, and you've been established. And it's so interesting to me that was part of your work ethic. And interesting to me also that it took you actually listening to you mentoring other people to take your own advice and know that it was actually okay just to fully commit. Well, you've always been fully committed to everything that you do, but to maybe relax into the idea that it's working for you?
Well, wasn't so much the idea of relaxing into it. One of the things that I used to say at my clinic is, if you spend 40 hours a week at McDonald's or wherever, shoe salesman or whatever, and, it also include the time that it takes you to drive there and your lunch break. Okay, that's 50 hours a week. And then how much are you going to make? And at the time, back like in the 80s, I think for that much work, you'd make $300, maybe $400. And so then I used to tell guys, if you spend 50 hours a week, can you make $400 in the music business? That's like one casual and maybe two jazz gigs.
Right, right.
And so if you spend 50 hours, can you find that one casual? I think so. And that was one of the things that I heard myself saying, because that's what I was doing anyway. And so that's what I decided, okay, this is how much I'm always making lists and writing out my goals. And so
and you still do that, right?
I still do, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I literally wrote out, how much do I need to make per month? And whatever the number is, okay, how can I meet that? And how many of these jobs and how many? And so I've always done things like that. So luckily it's always worked.
But one of the other things that is in that mix is you also don't limit yourself to having set a single price for your value. Like you don't confuse what you get paid with what your value is, which enables you to say yes to things that you want to do, things that you create on your own, and also to have a lucrative career.
Yeah, I definitely don't put a number on what I have to make, and that's just like I just really love playing. And if you want to pay me $10,000 an hour, great. If you want to pay me $10 an hour, great. And it really doesn't matter to me. I just like the idea that somebody's willing to pay me to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So And so to me, it only makes sense. I remember a time when I was doing a gig in South Pasadena, and it was myself and Lee Ritenour. And it was like a restaurant, and we were playing in the courtyard. And Lee
just
said,
the two of you?
Yeah. And Lee said to me, he goes, "I can't do this anymore." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I want to be a star, and stars don't do this." And he said, "This is it. This is my last gig." And that's when he stopped doing those types of gigs. And I applaud him for doing that. And he reached his goal. He became the celebrity that he wanted to be. But that's totally not me. It's a matter of fact, I enjoy the fact that I could go on tour and be in front of 100,000 people, and then the next night I could be back home playing for 10 people, which is actually even harder.
Yeah,
because the eye contact, they're right there, and you don't have all the lights and everything to enhance what you're doing, and so I really enjoy that, and so. Like I said, if I could be out on tour making a lot of money, and the next night I could come home and I'd be happy to go play at a club or do a casual. A lot of guys ask me, "Well, why do you still do casuals?" It's like, it's fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, in case people don't know, and I think many do, every year, wherever you fly in from, like Japan, or generally it's from Asia, you fly in the day of, and we do my annual Christmas show. Like, you still make it happen.
Absolutely. And that's actually something that's marked on the calendar, where I've actually told people I can't work past this day because I have to be here. And even Kenny G, he's like cut a tour because of your show.
No. Well, thank you for that, and thanks, Kenny, for that as well. It's amazing I'm still in Kenny's good graces.
Some things are important, So,
yeah.
How long have we been doing that now?
Since the album came out, I think that was 2012. We haven't missed a year until this year because of COVID. They're not
right.
allowing us to play this year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if I told you yet, but it's off the book. We're shutting down again. So I'm really disappointed. It's become like such a beautiful tradition for us, the band, and also for the audience. And I know you feel the same way. I just look so forward to celebrating the holidays with you musically and personally every year. It's just been great. We'll do it again. We will do it again. But
I'm confident. I'm confident that we'll be back at it next year.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. We might have masks on,
right?
But we'll do it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You're talking about that moment with you and Lee playing in a duo coffee house kind of thing together, and you and I both have the experience of playing like in a restaurant or doing a job and looking up and seeing ourselves on TV.
Yes.
Simultaneously, and everybody's like ignoring you, and they're watching the guy on TV, and it's the same guy.
So I've got to tell you about a situation where, before I went full time into playing music, and I was still doing the real job thing. And way back in the day, there was a thing called On and Select TV, which was cable TV.
This is a story I wanted you to share.
Okay, yeah. And so on several occasions, I would be in someone's house installing their cable TV, and I would be on TV. So one time in particular, there was a woman in there with her like 4 kids, and I just finished hooking up the whole TV, and I stepped back and I changed the channel, and Merv Griffin was on, and I was on Merv Griffin with Sergio Mendes. So I had to ask, I'm in her house. I said, "Excuse me, would you mind if I watch this show for just a minute? Because I'm on it." And she started laughing like, "Yeah, right, sure you are." And I'm like, "No, look, that's me." And her kids are cracking up. They're like, "That's really you." So like I said, it's happened on a couple of different occasions. So I've had some really funny and unusual situations like that happen before.
That's something I always marveled at, too, with all of our friends. One night you're playing for the president of the United States, and then the next night you're unloading your car in some shitty, dark parking lot, and we're getting ready to do our $50, $100 each gig.
Yeah. often I meet guys who are aspiring musicians and you know, they want to talk to me about their careers and they're always like talking about the big glamorous life and the huge concerts and stuff. And when I explain to them, you know, doing these small things, it's, in my opinion, it's just as important.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of guys just don't get it. They think that if you've made it, why would you work for $50? And I'm always trying to explain to guys, you're not getting the picture. This is about the music and about your opportunity to perform and share the things that you've learned how to do with your instrument. And a lot of guys just unfortunately just don't get it, you know. Right. So maybe there's hope for them.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things personally that I want to ask you before we get deeper into music. And one is that I didn't know until doing a little bit more research on you that you almost moved to Alaska because of your mom's job.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And that would have sort of in many ways changed the course of your life.
Probably. My mother was, I was living in Philadelphia. That's where I grew up. And my mother worked for ARCO. And when they first built the Alaskan pipeline back in the early 80s, well, gosh, in the 70s, I should say, she took a job in Alaska. And so we all went to Alaska. We found a house and everything. And it was all set. And they had, ARCO had given me a job on the pipeline. And everything was set to go. So we went back to Philadelphia, packed up our stuff, but it was going to take 3 weeks for the truck of furniture to get to Alaska. So in the meantime, they gave us a vacation in Los Angeles. And so we were staying at the Hyatt on Wilshire. And like the second.
So when you say we, who in your family?
So my sister, my mother, and my stepfather. Okay, and my younger brother. And I'm in LA. I'm not really sure what to do, but I look at the paper and I see that there's Drum City is like, you know, a famous drum store. So I've got to go check out Drum City. So being from Philadelphia, where you don't need a car, I didn't realize that I needed a car. So I started walking from Wilshire to get to Hollywood.
Vine.
Yeah, right. So I ended up walking all the way over there, which was like a long way. And after I came out of the drum shop, there was this black guy across the street, and he yelled at me. And he goes, "Hey, man!" You know, and he starts coming across the street. And so me being from Philly, I'm thinking, okay, you know, we got to fight. You know, he wants to rob me or something.
Protect your chin.
And he comes over, and then the first thing he says is, "What are you doing with those timbale sticks, man?" He goes, I hardly ever see a black guy with timbale sticks," which totally flipped me because I had a pair of timbale sticks in my back pocket. And I go, "Well, I'm playing." He goes, "Man, that's great. I'm playing with the band around the corner, Musicians Union. Why don't you come with me?" So he takes me around there, and Johnny Nelson's Latin band was rehearsing, and he let me sit in. And this guy was just like so cool. And he started explaining to me. I told him I was from Philly, and he started explaining to me about the LA scene and everything. And then I wasn't driving, so I had to get on the last bus heading back out to West Covina, where we had moved to. That guy was in Munyungo. Yeah. And he was like, he's probably the reason why I stayed. And so at that point, I'll be back to the hotel. And at that point, I told my mother, "I'm staying. I'm not leaving. You know, it's a cool music scene here. I met this guy. He's really cool." And then at the same time, my sister said, "Well, I want to stay too." So my mother said, "Well, we could transfer here instead." And that's why.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's how I ended up in LA.
How old were you?
I just got out of high school. So, yeah. So what, 15, 16, something like that. Maybe 17.
You know, that leads me, you know, that first encounter with Munyungo, who we are both friends with, you, of course, are still friends with. One of the things that you are really good at and that you understand the value of is friendships and long-term relationships and how those really help steer the course of your life as far as opportunities.
Yeah. I feel fortunate to have the friends that I do, like you.
Likewise.
But I never, have a friendship thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to get out of it. And there are perks to having friends in the business. You help your friends out, but it's just a nice feeling to have friends.
It is. Yeah. It really is. And part of what's been fun in our friendship over the years when we get to travel together or perform together and be on TV together, it's extra special because of the friendship.
Yeah.
It's more fun. It's just more fun.
Yeah.
And we also have each other's backs.
Mm-hmm.
We watch out for each other's best interest. We also make it fun by keeping it more entertaining and playful and kind of joking around with each other, but also making sure when it's time for business, we handle our business.
Right, exactly. Yeah, always taking care of business, and which just brought something to mind. And I'm kind of like totally flipping subjects, but talking about friends and being working with friends. This last couple of years, socially, has been hard for everybody, especially the Republican Democrat thing. And one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with is like dealing with friends who have different political views. So I'm curious, asking you and also asking the people who are listening, like how are you dealing with that situation? I know how I'm handling it. How are you handling it?
With a lot of thought. And as much compassion as I can drum up. It's a great question. Thanks for asking it, because it's a multi-layered question.
Yeah.
Because it's not just politics anymore. It's now about racism. It's about, I mean, we can just stop with those two.
Right.
I mean, it's about so many things, but I can't not think about the political state of our country right now without thinking about racism. And you and I have talked about this before, but let's just put it on the table right now. We both have dear friends. A lot of people we know have family members who just are very pro-Trump, and they don't think that there's any kind of a connection with that. It doesn't make them racist or the president racist. It encourages racism.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part for me. So I think I want to hear what you have to say about that, but I would say that any opportunity that I have to speak with a friend who wants to speak honestly and not defensively about it, that's when I'll have the conversation. But there are neighbors of mine who I love that live across the street or various places. We would do anything for each other. We care about each other, respect each other. I don't really feel like it would be wise to talk about politics with them because they have Fox TV on all day.
Right.
And they're Christians, which kind of blows my mind as well.
Right.
So the thing is, I'll turn on Fox TV. I think it's important to be informed. I like to get my information from different sources, not just one. But the most important thing in the question that you're asking me is that I think what's really lacking in our country is people being willing to have a conversation and being curious about what the other person thinks and why they think that, and hopefully that they would be curious to understand your point of view.
Yeah, oh boy.
When you're traveling with somebody, this is your family.
Right. So it's
even harder.
So more like to the point is like in Kenny G's band, there's 6 band members, 3 white guys, 3 guys of color. 3 white guys are Republicans. The 3 guys of color are Democrats. And it's almost always been that way. And that's never been a problem up until Trump came around.
Okay.
Yeah. And so out of the 3 guys that are Republicans, 2 of them are Trump guys. And the one guy, Kenny, who should be a Trump guy, isn't, but he's a Republican. Okay. And so the basic difference to me, and hopefully the Republicans that are listening right now don't turn it off. Listening to us right now.
Yeah.
But
stay with us. Yeah.
But to me, the basic difference is that the basic belief of the Republican Party is give power and the money, mostly the power, and money and the good life which comes along with that, to the older white guys who always run things, and let them decide how everybody else is going to live. And to me, that's what the Republican Party stands for. And I can deal with that because that's the way it's always been. And then on the other side, the Democrats basically are, let's spread it out and make it equal for everybody. And to me, that's that. And then you have the people who believe in Trump. I think that Trump has pulled a con on these guys, and it's really all about him. And he's made them think that everybody is terrible. So even though he's terrible, they're like him and we're their enemies. And so that's why they should back him. So having said that, I know a lot of Republican guys wouldn't agree with me on that, but it would be nice to have a discussion about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And discussion,
yeah,
not argument.
Right, exactly. Now, one thing that I know that I've done that I'm not really sure about how I feel about what I've done is I know that I have a black friend who's a Muslim who is a total Trump supporter. And I don't understand it, but I still deal with him because I'm trying to understand, out of all the people, how could you support him? So, but I find myself giving more leeway to him than I would my white acquaintances who are total Trump guys. And some of those guys, I've just shut them out. But then I haven't shut up people of color. So I know there's something wrong with me that I don't understand why I do that.
Right. You feel like that you're lacking something personally to not be able to shut him down.
Right. And why am I still trying to help him and not still trying to help them?
That makes sense. But those are the people I'm most curious about speaking with, people who are of color, people who are beaten down in some way, people who are gay, transgender, gender fluid, women who are being oppressed. Like, how are you supporting this?
All I can see in that situation is that he's really Fox News. They've conned these people into thinking that they're not that way. Actually, let me say this. Most of the people that are Trump supporters, in my opinion, are racist. And I think that one of the biggest...
That's a strong statement.
Yeah, I know, but I'm going to back it up right now.
And I know you don't say that lightly.
Right, I don't. I think that the biggest problem is, and intentionally, it's this, like, people don't know what racism is. And because they've been told racism means you don't like somebody of another race, then they'll say, well, I love this guy. I love Ron, so I can't be a racist. And so now they feel like they're off the hook. But that's not the way it works. So for everybody who's listening, I want to say this is what racism is. And if you understand what I'm saying, then you can make up your mind as to whether you're a racist or not. Okay, so after giving a lot of thought, racism is an attitude in a society which puts one group of people above everybody else. And then along with the power by giving them power, and in most cases, weapons, history, but guns, basically, those people create laws which dehumanize, oppress, they create inequality, and that's a dehumanization, oppression, inequality, dehumanization, and just that's basically it. And so that's the situation that it creates, and that's what everybody's calling systemic racism. That system,
right?
And if you believe in a system that creates that racist system, then you're a racist for supporting that system. And Trump is all about that system. And so if you support Trump, if you support him and his racism, that's what makes you a racist. And if other people could understand that, I think that they wouldn't support him. It wouldn't be that. That's what I think.
How do you reconcile still loving some of your friends who then are racist?
It's very difficult.
I would imagine.
But at the same time, unfortunately, because of the racism that's been in America since the beginning, basically, not much has changed for me.
Right.
I've always had to deal with racist people in our society. But what's changed now is now they have to deal with being called on it. And so now the dynamic is different because they're tired of people like me calling them on their racism.
Right. And now as a person of color and a person who has an understanding of American history and racism, you're put in the probably very uncomfortable position and frustrating position of now having to wait for people to start to finally wake up and understand and realize what you've known your whole life.
Yeah, but it's not, like I said, it's not uncomfortable because I've always had to do that. Anyway, for me, it's like same as always.
All right. I'm right.
Unfortunately. So,
or the phrase that I've heard for so many years from my friends and family of color, I've been black my whole life.
Yeah. I haven't said that, but that's absolutely right. But you know what was actually very interesting, and I don't want to get too far into this subject. Another friend of mine, bass player, Cece, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. He said to me once that black people are the only people who identify themselves by a color.
Oh.
Which I never thought about before.
Well, no, some white racists identify themselves as a color also.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
But not just regular white folks.
Right. Okay. And, he pointed out to me how it's not really a good thing. And so so I'm starting to lean in that same direction of maybe there's a better name that we can have for ourselves, but that's a whole other discussion.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing some clarity to that. It gives me a better understanding of what's going on in our country, and not only what is going on, but what has always been going on.
Yeah.
My viewpoint is continuing to evolve and change. And some of that is due to me having friends that are generous enough to explain things with clarity like that, like you, and so thanks for that. And, and just getting not educated, re-educated, more deeply educated as to what's always been here. And I think a willingness to have a conversation like the one that we're having is, which is not as hard for you and I because we're more on the same side of the fence.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm not denying anything that you're saying.
Right. Yeah, it would be wonderful to have the same kind of conversation with guys who are on the other side of the fence.
Right.
It's like back to like the situation with in Kenny G's band. Once I said to the band, it's like, well, we live in a racist society, and the guitar player in the band said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You don't understand it."
What are you talking about?
Right. And he really
would ask that question.
Yeah, and he really doesn't think that there's a racial problem in America.
Okay.
And so then I have to become a historian and explain to him the history of the United States, which is contrary to what he learned in school.
Right.
And so I feel bad for guys like that. It's like I want to be mad, but I can't be mad. I just, I feel so bad for them because of the misinformation that they have. And then, it's like, so do I spend all my time trying to put them up to speed and really tell them the truth about life? Is that my job? Or do we just play music? So then that's where, it becomes, the juggling becomes difficult for me. It's like, okay, is it just music or do I have to explain life to you? So, yeah.
That's a big burden to carry.
Yeah.
I see that. Yeah. I understand that. Man, my heart goes out to you. It always has on every level, but it's going out on another level now, hearing you say that.
Yeah. So, one day we maybe...
Well, let's...
Go ahead.
Let's tie that into music, because one of the things that you said to me recently in one of our conversations is about your fellow Black percussionist friends and their relationship to Latin music and slavery, and I'm just fascinated by that. And could you talk about
absolutely.
that for a moment?
And especially, I hope everybody's still listening, but especially for especially for young Black players coming up, I was in that situation, and I understand what you're going through, and so that's what I'm going to talk about now. My instrument, hand drumming, especially conga drums, when I first heard them, I didn't realize at the time that I was actually listening to white guys and American Black guys, and along with the Latin guys that I was listening to. And then I fell in love with hand drumming, and then I started playing. And once I got involved in it, right from the beginning, it's like, oh man, you got to go hang out with the Puerto Rican guys. And so I did that. I used to swear I was Puerto Rican, and then after some years, then I got with Sergio Mendes, and all of a sudden I'm hanging in Brazil, and it's like, oh man, I got to speak Portuguese. I got to be a Brazilian guy, and put all my energy into being Brazilian. And then later on, as my career is going on, I realized, I've got to play African music. So, went back to my roots, got my dashiki, and started playing djembe and everything. And then only until recently did I say, wait a minute, I'm from Philly, So
right, I'm a Motown guy, right?
So when can I be me? And it's like, with all the love and respect that I have for Cuban guys, because that's where the conga's from, it's like, I don't want to be Cuban because I'm not, and I don't want to be Puerto Rican because I'm not, and so I want to be me. But I've done the homework, and I've studied your stuff, and I've studied his stuff, and I've studied his stuff. But now the question is, how do I fit into all this? So I've asked a lot of other Black percussionists who are like doing jobs and working on a level, and I haven't really come up with an answer yet. And so I hear a lot of younger Black guys say, well, I want to make this my own. And when I was young, I would have said, no, you got to be Cuban. No, you have to be Brazilian. But now my attitude has changed. And now I say to those guys, learn the roots, learn the basics, do your history, but then, go out on your own. And when guys tell you you don't sound Cuban, you just tell them, yeah, that's right, I'm not Cuban. And be proud of who you are and go for your thing. That's it.
And you're not saying don't learn the language.
Oh, no.
I mean the rhythmic fundamentals of whether it's the north side of the island or the south side, and how that came over from Africa, and like learn your history.
Yeah, definitely learn your history. Learn all it.
Learn how it's connected.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense, trying to reinvent the wheel. It's there. So learn all about the Cuban stuff. Learn all about every different Latin American country that has hand drumming in it. But don't forget about yourself, and be proud of who you are and bring what you have to the table also. And, it might be popular, it might not, but you'd be better off just being yourself.
That's beautifully said, Ron. And I also think that you've done a magnificent job of doing that, of blending the two, because you have been a disciple, as a student of percussion and world percussion, literally by traveling the world, by studying with masters, by immersing yourself in cultures, by learning to speak Portuguese. But one perfect example is your pandera playing, which for those who don't know is a Brazilian tambourine. I'm dumbing it down. Correct me if I'm
no, you're right. You're right.
If I'm not saying it, but
right.
It's a traditional Brazilian instrument that appears to be like a large tambourine, but it's played completely different. And you have learned to play it traditionally, but you also, like in the Kenny G concerts, because you're also an athlete and a martial artist, you have had your custom stands built for all of your gear so that you could climb on top of them and do flips off of them with a pandera in your hand while you're playing. That's kind of being you.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Why are you laughing? I mean, you look embarrassed, and I'm complimenting you because it combines your athleticism, your musicianship, your appreciation for performance.
Yeah. Okay.
For how to put on a good show.
Mm-hmm.
You were mentioning in your mini get a job things that you did. One of the things that you did was model.
Yeah.
So even your awareness back then of the understanding of how to, just the importance of how you present yourself, what you appear like in front of a camera, what you appear like on a stage. You don't shy away from that.
No.
You have a good time with
absolutely. One thing that Sergio Mendes taught me a whole lot, I think of Sergio Mendes as my first big gig, even though I did a lot of notable gigs prior to him. But Sergio really mentored me and taught me stuff. And Sergio was the one who told me, Derek, I could be a great player and stay at home and just sit in the studio and work. And that's cool.
Right.
But he said, the reason why I hired you was because I could see that I could mold you into the guy that I want you to be. Okay. He told me that straight up after he held auditions all over the world after Paulino da Costa left his band. And Paulino da Costa was an incredible showman. And incredible. And Sergio said, I need that from you, but I also need, and he pointed out very specifically all the things that he wanted me to be able to do. And so I started working on those things. And there was after I'd been in his band for a year, there was a time when we were in Hong Kong and we were playing at some really fancy supper club, and the band's playing and people were in the audience and there's waiters and there's a lot of noise going on and everything, and nobody's paying attention to the band. Sergio calls me over and he goes, take as much time as you need, but get the audience or else we're not coming back on stage. And I went, huh? And the band all walked off stage. Okay. I grabbed the drummer, Alan Diaz at the time. I grabbed the drummer and said, stay with me. Not knowing what I was going to do, but he said, get the audience. So I started soloing on just whatever came to mind. And it took about 10 minutes. But then after 10 minutes, the whole audience, including the waiters and everybody, was stopping and watching me. And then he came back out and said, Rob Powell, and then the concert went on and everybody was watching the concert from then. But that was the moment that I realized I've become an entertainer. I'm also a showman now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
With no apologies, because that doesn't diminish or compromise your musicianship. No. It expands.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very proud of that. And one of the best compliments that I ever got was from Liza Minnelli. Just one day after a show, and over the years I've met so many people, but she came backstage one day and said, "You're an entertainer's entertainer," coming from her.
Wow.
So still to this day, I'm like,
and you took it as a compliment.
Absolutely.
It actually is the highest compliment.
Absolutely. So I try not to compromise any of my musical ability. I will admit that every once in a while, it's like, okay, do I play this really, really clean, or do I do something flashy on the cymbals? I might do the flashy and leave that really complicated, nice rollout for the show, but that's rare. But at least when I do it, I'm aware of it.
It's a choice.
Yeah, and so I'm very happy with the way things have worked out for me as far as balancing musicianship and showmanship. I guess that's not a bad way of putting it. Yeah.
Right. Those are two of the three elements of the reason that I love playing with you. The other is our friendship.
Okay.
I just love you. But also it's your musicianship, your ability to get inside of a song. When I send you, even when I've got a new song and you're going to be rolling in from some other country and you're not going to make the rehearsal, I never worry about you because I send you the chart, the song. Not only do you learn the song and understand my intention with it, but you make it your own. You still take it another level. You're not copying somebody else's part unless you understand that there was a particular reason for that shaker or triangle part. Yeah. But you still make it your own. And then your performance aspect, you're fun to share a stage with. And people enjoy it. So I think those things work in your favor. And clearly they do because, one of the things that I think is really admirable and impressive is that you've spent over 30 years simultaneously playing in two major bands.
Yeah.
With Kenny G and with Diana Ross. The fact that you have been able to, you were talking about balance, balancing the musicality with the performance aspect of it as an entertainer. But you also have managed to balance family. You've managed to balance staying physically in remarkable shape, even with a shoulder injury that you had a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I know that was rough, but you recovered.
Oh, yeah.
I think that your discipline and your martial arts focus and point of view and practice is a better word for it.
Yeah.
But you have also managed to work for two stars and be in their band full time and somehow make that work. And bravo, man, to you to be able to do that.
I'm astonished every time that I'm able to pull it off. It's like every time I try to set my priorities straight. And one of the priorities is stay true to my word. So if I tell you I'm going to do this gig, I'm going to do that gig. I don't care if the other gig's paying $10,000 and you're paying $100. If I said I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there.
You're there.
So that's one thing that allows me to do that, because I'm, I don't care the outcome, because I feel like I'm doing the right thing.
So integrity still gets recognized in the music business as something of great value then, is what you're saying?
Yes, I think so.
Or at least with the artists that you work with.
Yeah. And then another thing that I do is whenever I don't tell somebody I can't work with them. I'm either available or I'm not.
Right.
Okay. And then I leave it up. Yeah. So then I leave it up to them. Every time that I tell somebody that I'm not available, I just assume that I'm never going to work with them again. And then if they call me back, I'm like, oh, great. But if they don't call me back, that's what I expected. Luckily for me, in both of these situations, they keep calling back, and every time I'm grateful, and I'm just really happy that they're still calling.
And because of that, you've also managed to have a little bit of wiggle room with working out the scheduling of both.
Yeah.
Very occasionally sending in not just a sub, but the right sub.
Yeah. Right. Well, one thing is, I actually tell everybody, if you want the gig and if you think you can take it, do so. Go for it. And I do that because that way they don't have to feel like they need to hold back, but also that also encourages me to make sure that I'm keeping my game up.
Right.
And luckily it hasn't happened yet. So.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. Somebody gave me advice. I don't remember who it was. When I first moved to LA, 1981, and they were saying, don't ever send in somebody better than you to sub for you. And I went, that's bullshit.
You're right. No.
Why would I not send in the best person that I could send in?
Right. I try to send the best person. And then I tell them, this guy you're getting is like the number one guy in the world.
Right.
And if they still choose to call me back, then it's like, wow, then I must be doing something right.
Right.
So.
Well, there's something interesting also in the percussion world that's different in the guitar tribe. I've only recognized it really globally in two groups, singers and drummer percussionists.
Yes.
It's a tribe.
Yes.
And I'm saying that because guitar players aren't really known for recommending their friends for other things. Right. If they can't do it, they don't tell nobody about it. Percussionists and singers are always saying, I'm not available, but here's 3 people who would be great.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that doesn't transfer into these other worlds, because I've never operated that way. I just have not. If I can think of somebody that would be a good hookup, I don't need to benefit from that.
Yeah. And like the drum family, like we're so close knit.
It is a family.
In this room right here, pre-COVID time, like pretty much every day when I'm not on tour, there's 3 to 10 guys in this room, and we're all playing drums and all playing percussion and trying to help each other learn more about this, because there's so much to learn. That happens all the time, and there are drum circles all over the world, everywhere. Every Sunday there's drum circles in a park somewhere.
Right.
So it really is a drum family, and it really is cool that we unite like that.
I think so. I don't like using the word jealous because I don't really like the idea of jealousy. However, I feel sometimes jealous that That's not in my community, you know, and I think that's why I'm always hanging with drummers and singers because it just feels healthy.
Yeah.
It feels more on a spiritual level. It just feels just wider.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
It's not fear-based.
Right.
It's heart-based. It's love-based and curiosity-based. Like, again, you guys are always like showing each other things and figuring things out. And for anybody who's still listening to either one of us talking right now in this very opinionated interview from both of us, I would say bring that into whatever tribe you're in. And even if you're not a musician, I encourage people to bring that kind of openness and curiosity and open-heartedness into whatever you do. You get more out of life that way.
I agree with you. So well said.
Thanks. I'm so glad you're bringing some of these things up. Part of that family, I like calling it a tribe. I say tribe because drums are tribal.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, these are the two original instruments. Voice,
right.
Talking, singing, chanting, yelling, screaming, and then hitting on a log with, a bone. Those are the original instruments. So I guess that's why that maybe still carries over. You guys have been doing it the longest.
Yeah.
So,
but when you said that, something came to mind, which I got to mention. I know that you have my first CD, and you had asked me before if I sang on my CD.
Yes.
My first performance ever was in church, and it was singing the song "Amen, Amen." I practiced for a month. All my relatives came to church that day. The time came, I stepped up in front of the mic and froze. And then the choir leader started singing the song for me, and I just kind of stepped back, and I never sang it. So that was my introduction to the music business.
Wow.
I always remember that. So you asked me about if I sang on my record. And so that's the first thing I thought of is like,
And the reason I asked you, I thought it was you. It sounded like you, but it was in Portuguese.
Yeah.
I guess I just didn't realize the extent of your understanding of the language to be able to sing in that language.
And actually on that particular track, I had a bunch of great singers in the studio.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, and when it came to that song, they didn't speak Portuguese. So I said, okay, well, phonetically, I wrote it out for him, and I said, "Okay, I'll sing it one time so you can hear how it goes." And after I sang it, the lead singer went, "That's fine."
Yeah,
and I went, "No, that's me." And she said, "No, it's fine." And that's why I left it on there.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm really glad you did. By the way, where can people find that record?
I'm not as computer savvy as I should be. But I do have my website up, ronpowellpercussion.com. And so that CD, and I actually have another CD, my newest one, that and my instructional book on congas can be found at my website.
Good. I
used to really like the idea that when we had record stores, because
I did too.
Yeah, but nowadays, it's all about downloads and stuff. And I like having a product in hand. I like being able to, open it up and read the credits. I still like that. So I prefer to try to sell it that way. If somebody wants to buy the download, it's like, okay. But I'd rather send it the CD. If you still, so.
Right. It's tactile. It's the whole experience.
Yeah.
And that whole experience is, I still look at albums as the arc of a story.
Yes.
So to physically have something, whether it's vinyl or a CD or even if it's a download. I mean, I love singles. I release singles as well. But I love albums.
Yeah.
I love the contour of one song to the other.
Yeah.
That's what we grew up on.
Yeah, exactly.
I encourage everybody to go to your website. We're going to list the website again in case you didn't write it down. One of the things that I wanted to talk about in the drum community is, Manyango, Paulinho da Costa, Luis Conte. Didn't Luis have something to do with recommending you to Diana Ross or involved in that in some way?
Well, funny enough with Luis, it seems like almost like whenever he would leave a gig, I was the next guy in. So one of my favorite all time bands was Tanya Maria. Yeah. And so when he left Tanya Maria, Joe Heredia was playing drums at the time. And so Joey actually said, hey, you should get Rob Powell. And so that's how I got in that band. And then Luis was playing with Diana Ross. And then when he went to Madonna, I think it was John Pena said, hey, you should get Rob Powell. And then when Luis left Madonna, I did the gig. So it's just like I found myself following him. So
it makes me think of two things. One is I really appreciate, it speaks to what we were talking about. I appreciate that in our community that people bring people along. They reach out and bring their percussionists, do that with other percussionists or bass players, drummers. There's that kind of level of support in not being afraid to recommend people. The other thing it makes me think about is I need to find a guitar player to stand in line behind that so that I can get all of their beautiful tours, when they're done with them.
Yeah. What?
I got to find like a guy like you found Luis.
Right. And one thing that I actually tell a lot of my students, I have some students that just come to me because they are trying to understand the business of how to work. And one of the things I tell them is like, okay, well, if you're a shoe salesman, you go to the shoe store if you're looking for a job. So if you're a musician and you're looking for a job, go to where there's music, but also know who's working. And I tell guys, like, that I'm working, and that I work with Kenny and I work with Diana. And so if I'm out on a tour with Kenny, that means nobody's working with Diana. So call Diana,
Right.
And so I tell that to my guys,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it only makes sense.
And here's another suggestion for those listening, because, a big part of the mission statement of our show is about the mentoring aspect. Uh-huh. And it's kind of the mission statement of both of our lives. And most of the people, I would say all of the guests who are on the show have some understanding of the importance of sharing information. When I was told that I was going to be next in line on Diana Ross's band, when Kevin Chocan had asked me to sub, I said, absolutely, send me the book. And I still haven't subbed in the band. It hasn't happened yet. But if and when it does, I'm a step up.
Yeah, I do this.
Because I've already dug in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the same way. It's like if I hear of a possibility, I do all my homework that I possibly can. And then when the situation happens, I'm prepared. So,
right. And there's no downside.
Right, absolutely. Over the years, I've done a lot of auditions. And I think that one of the reasons, luckily for me, I've never lost an audition. And I think one of the reasons is because I think I did more homework than everybody else. It's like I never think, okay, I'm a better player than these other 20 guys. It's just, I think that in every situation that I can think of where we've all auditioned, it's like I did more homework. And so say, for example, on the Madonna audition, not only did I learn her entire library prior to the audition, so that I could hear what she wanted, what she was used to hearing, I did my homework on all the other guys who were auditioning, so that when we went into the audition, I said, I know what he's going to do to show off, or like to highlight himself, and I knew what everybody was going to do. So when it came my turn to feature, I did what everybody else did, and I did some more. It adds up, and
right.
And so so to me, like I said, that's just doing your homework. And so I've always done my homework on any gig, and I think that's why one of the reasons why I've been successful in the industry.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the art of auditioning, which is, in my mind, the art of auditioning sometimes seems like it's different, or the skill of auditioning is different than the actual skill of performing. There's like something else that needs, because you do have to show off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if you're not going to be showing off in the show.
Yeah, right.
Because that's not what the job requires.
Right.
The job requires you just to do that. But you still have to have that extra thing so you can go, look at me, I can play fast.
The key words that you used are what's required. So the job requires one thing, the audition requires something. Okay. Right. And so I think that people who understand that if you want to make it in the music industry, aside from being a celebrity on your own, if you want to work with other people, the key to that is doing what's required in their situation. And that also means audition the way it's required and do the job the way that it's required.
So what are a few of those things that are required? Like, in addition to what you just said, I would add to the list showing up early, looking like you actually cared enough to put yourself together in some way to show up for the audition. What other things? What are the things that you bring to an audition?
So my approach is first of all, to play the music the way that the artist wants it to be played. So if that means overplaying, that's what I'll do. If it means minimalize, that's what I'll do. And I'm happy doing each. Okay. Right. So if they want me to do solos through every single song, okay, I can do that. If you want me to play a shaker through the whole song, I'll do that lovingly. Okay. So that's my first thing. And then people are coming to look at the show. So what's my attitude? That's where kind of like acting comes into musicianship. It's like, what is the character that I'm playing for this show? What's necessary? What's required? What is this artist all about? In Kenny G's band, he's pushed himself. He's got a reputation of being sleepy. Okay, and because he's pushed himself to the point where he believes that that's what people want to hear. So he likes to play a lot of ballads on the show. And we've had straight up conversations where he's just said to me, I need you to put energy in my show. And so that's what I have to bring to that show. And so what does that mean? Bring energy to it. It's like, I'm not going to, set off smoke bombs on every song, but I have to figure out, okay, within the context of the song, how can I project energy and give people something to look at? And so I figured that out, and then that's what I do. And I think that's one of the reasons why I get called back, and pretty much in everybody's band, I try to assess the situation. What is it that you really need from me? In this band, do I need to be a showman, or do I need to hold back, or you only need a showman for 5 minutes? I assess those situations, and then that's what I give them.
There's a lot of clarity to that. That makes great sense. In additionally, you were talking about whether, some artists want you to overplay, some want you to underplay. There's also stylistically, like some artists will want you to play on top of the beat. Yeah. Some artists will want you to put it right down the middle and kind of hold it down, while other people in the band are adding the rushing aspect of it to give it the excitement. But your job is not to go with that, but it's to hold the middle.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Even when I played in Kepmo's band, he talked to me a lot about playing on the back of the backside of the beat.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't mean dragging.
Right.
Our pocket was deep, but he liked the idea of us just kind of like bringing it slightly on the backside of that and staying consistent. And I love those kind of conversations.
Yeah. I had one person explain it to me one way, which I've always held on to. They said, imagine the beat one as the word one, O-N-E. You can either play on the end, or you can play on the O, which you're slightly behind it, or play on the E. So all within that one, you have 3 different places to play.
Wow.
Okay. So that's one thing that I live by. And usually, luckily for me, my job is to enhance what the drummer's doing. Right. So as long as the drummer also has that understanding, they can work really well together. Because even if they want me to play ahead, if he stays on the end, I can play on the E.
Right.
So as long as the drummer and I have that understanding. So sometimes it's funny when I work with new drummers, because I'm really trying to get in their head. I stare at them. I'm like, some guys are like, "Why are you looking at me?" It's like, I'm
right, what I did.
Right. It's like, okay, it's not that I like you or anything. You're nice.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand you. I'm trying to understand your body language. I'm trying to understand how you play so that I can compliment you properly. So.
You just made a little joke about it being misunderstood. You giving somebody the eye in the band, but that leads me to something else I've been wanting to ask you, which is you're kind of the king of road stories. And
yeah.
And there's one story that comes to mind in Paris.
Oh, okay. All right. I won't go into too much detail because it's a long
I just want to hear a couple short. Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 stories I want to hear.
Okay.
Brief versions.
Very brief. I was living in Paris with the band, and a couple of musicians and I, we were living in the same apartment building. We were there for like a month and a half, and we met this guy who told us how, this is back before cell phones, that story. And so he told us how to rig the telephone so that you could call around the world for free. So we finished the concert, and then one night we go, let's go call the girls. So yeah, let's do that thing that Boto told us about. So we got the screwdriver, the tape, the wire, and we were living in the Moulin Rouge district. And for people who know Paris, in that district, at the end of the street there's a park where all the transvestites hang out to work at night. So we're scouring the area looking for an old telephone booth that we could rig. And the only one that we could find was at the park. So we're in the telephone booth. We got the phone taken all apart, and we're like wiring it up so that we could call the world for free. And I look outside of the phone booth, and there's a police car coming. So I jump out and I say, man, take all the wires out. So I jump out of the phone booth, I close the door behind me, and I'm standing there, and the cops pulled up, and they come over in the first and say, well, what are you doing? And my first response was, you can't touch me, I'm American. So they grab me and throw me on the ground. They open it.
Wrong.
They open the door, and my friend is standing there like this, like with the wires and everything coming out of the phone. So they're like looking, it's like, what is going on? So they arrest us. And they take us to the police station. And this is like 1:00 in the morning, at night. And the first thing that happened is they made us strip down, put all my stuff on the table. And my friend is like sweating bullets. And I'm like, well, it's cool. I've been arrested before. It's no big, no big deal. He's like, no, look. And he had a hash pipe and some hash. So I was like, oh boy. But then luckily the sergeant, the French sergeant came in and he picked up the pipe, he picked up the hash, picked up some other stuff. Okay, get dressed. Didn't say anything about it. So then we get dressed, and then they take us down the Champs-Élysées to the main police station. And they assigned one detective to me and another detective to my friend. I'm not going to say his name just in case he doesn't want this.
That's right.
Yeah. So they asked me, well, what were you doing? I said, well, I was trying to make a phone call. And they said, well, why were all the wires and stuff out of the phone? I said, well, a friend of mine told me that that's how you make phone calls in France. And, and the first thing they said was like, you can't be that stupid. And I went, yes, I can, But they're like laughing, and they're speaking to me in English and then saying stuff in French. And I don't get what they're laughing about. And now my friend, for some reason, he told them that he only spoke Spanish. Okay. And so they're speaking to him in Spanish, they're speaking to me in English. And then finally one of the detectives goes, okay, look, we're through playing games. Just tell us which one of you is the trick. The trick? You guys are I'm like, no! And it just so happens that my friend, it was like a really good looking guy. Okay, and he had curly hair, And so they thought that because we were in the transvestite district, they thought that we were performing sexual acts in the phone booth.
In the phone booth.
Yeah. And then we're like, no, we were trying to ring. Now we're telling them the truth. We're trying to ring the phone. They're like, no. You're paying them for sex. I'm like, no. So after hours.
That's great.
After hours, they actually told my friend, okay, well, you have to come back to court. Because when the police got there, your boyfriend was outside of the phone booth, but you were still in it, so you have to go to court. So, so they let us go at like 5 a.m. And we never told the artist that we were working with what had happened. And luckily,
good move.
Right, and luckily we left town like a week, 2 weeks later, and so he never went to court. But it was an interesting time.
That's a great story.
Man.
So just one other, Malaysia, another prison story.
I don't know. A lot of my stories have to do with jail and stuff, but I think my adventurous attitude got me into these situations. So very briefly, I was at the time, this was back in the 80s, where a lot of hijackings were going on. Airplane hijackings. And I was going on a Southeast Asia tour, and at the time I was hanging out with some cops, and we would go to the rifle range, and I had just started riding a motorcycle, and I joined a motorcycle club.
Which, by the way, you're a big motorcycle enthusiast.
Yeah. So
it's one of your passions.
Yes. So on this story, at the time, my mindset, hanging out with cops, hanging out with a motorcycle gang, very over the top macho. So on this trip, I decide, if somebody wants to hijack a plane, they got to deal with me. I'm bringing a gun. So
I'm speechless.
So I did this whole tour with the gun in my pocket, basically.
Wow.
Until the very last part of the tour, we were going from Malaysia to Hong Kong, and then we were supposed to go home. Nobody knew I had the gun except for one person in the band. And on this day when we would go to the airport, my wife, she didn't know I had it. She came walking in the room, and I had it, and I just threw it in a bag, and thinking, okay, I'll hide it later. I forgot that I threw it in the bag. Right. So when we got to the airport, out of all the bags that they checked, that was the one bag that they put in the X-ray machine. Okay. And then they came and said, excuse me, in front of the whole band, excuse me, Mr. Powell, we think we have your gun. And I looked at everybody, and everybody's like, what? I said, I'll be right back. So I went to the police station at the airport in Malaysia, explained to them why I had the gun and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't quite tell them the truth. But I explained to them, and I knew what the laws were. And they were like, well, yes, but next time you bring a gun in our country, you have to report it ahead of time. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry about that. So then they said, okay, well, go ahead and get on the flight. You can go now. So they gave the gun to the pilot. I got on the plane. Everybody in the band is looking at me as I get on the plane. I'm like, we'll talk about this later. The plane starts going down the runway. And then all of a sudden, all these military vehicles were also racing up the runway. And they blocked the plane. Got on with machine guns. There he is. Get him. And they took me back off the plane.
Wow.
So I'm back. So I ended up being in Malaysia for the whole next week. Turns out that Nancy Reagan was at the airport. And somebody thought that I was trying to assassinate Nancy Reagan. It just so happened that I had danced with her at the White House a month before. So they're like, you were at the White House. Now she's here. You're here. You have a gun. Something's wrong. Okay. Wow. So it took a week for the whole thing to get cleared. And after a week, they finally let me go. And at the time, my lawyer, Johnny Cochran,
For real?
Gave me some advice on how to handle the whole situation. But I found out a decade later that the real reason why they let me go was because my wife's mother's brother, her uncle, is the minister of real estate for Indonesia. Oh. He called and said, that's my nephew, let him go. That's how I ended up getting out. And I had a whole week of being in this prison, going through all kinds of stuff. And they actually put me on death row as the number one criminal in the country. So for me, it's a great story, and I laugh about it. My wife will get furious if she finds out that I'm talking about it. But it's
okay. Yeah. Nobody's going to hear this story but me.
Right.
Just kidding.
But it was very interesting. And for years after that situation, I would get hired on jobs where I'd go to the job and they're like, we really just want to hear the story. So, and then even a couple of years later, I got approached by this really famous actor to do a movie about it. And at that time, then I called Johnny Cochran's office, and they said, "Nah, the Malaysian government wouldn't be real happy about that." So they discouraged me from making a movie about it. But it's
wow,
very
that's a beautiful story.
It's very interesting,
man.
So
really, really incredible. Speaking of Dancing with Nancy Reagan, which is just really such an obscure reference,
right.
But you've played for 3 presidents.
Yeah. Reagan, both Bushes. No, Reagan, Yeah, actually, both Bushes and Clinton, because Clinton and G,
being a musician,
yeah,
right?
And and I've had the honor and privilege of playing for Kings. Everybody's played for the Soul to Brunei, and
I haven't.
Oh, okay. And it turns out,
get me on the next
right.
one. Right, I'll go with you.
And back in the day, the Shah of Iran, his favorite band was Sergio Mendes, and his favorite instrument was conga. So I ended up giving him a conga lesson. So I've done a lot of those cool kind of gigs, and because I've been touring for so long, I've been in so many unusual situations. I was playing at a bull ring once in Mexico with 105,000 people. They started shouting my name after the solos. Pretty incredible experiences like that. But like I said, even after doing that, playing somewhere like in the baked potato, I get nervous. Oh, who's going to be here? So, big gigs or small gigs, they're all important.
I know people forget. I was going to ask you about any memorable, like really standout performances. The bull ring's a great example.
Yeah. For me, the gig that stands out the most in my mind is like one of my lists that I made of bands that I was going to play with. Santana was at the top of the list for years. It's like, you play with Santana, you've made it.
Right.
I finally got the call, and I go and I do the gig. And afterwards, I talk to him and I talk to the management, and they tell me, okay, well, you think about it. We'll talk in the morning and we'll discuss numbers and all that kind of stuff. And right after that, I went to a Denny's with my wife, and I'm sitting at Denny's, and she's looking at me. She's like, "What's the matter?" Because I was like totally bummed out, totally depressed. She's like, "You just play with your heroes. Why are you this? I expected you to be like overjoyed." And then I said to her, "They were making mistakes." And then she said, "Well, they're human." And then I really had to think about it. And then I said, "I don't want them to be human. These are my heroes. And if that's the pinnacle of the music business, and if I'm already there, I know I'm not where I think the pinnacle is. So I don't so I don't want them to be human." So the next morning when I talked to the management, I told them I can't do the tour. And I realized that it was more important for me to have heroes than for me to work with them. Mm-hmm. So for me
that's amazing.
Yeah, that really went deep in my heart, deep in my soul to think about that.
It sounds like you don't regret that decision.
Oh, no, not at all.
That remains the correct decision.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because they're still my heroes,
Right.
Yeah. And so I still have something to look up to. And one thing that's happened over the years from hanging out with so many great musicians and having so many friends who have become millionaires and stuff is like, I realized that having a goal is very important, because once you've attained everything that you want, then what's next? And I see that a lot of people have problems with that. That's when people, a lot of people just lose it because they've got the cars that they want, they got the house that they want,
right.
And now what? And so then they find, if they're lucky, they find religion, or maybe they're, like in Kenny's case, luckily for him, he moved next door to Bill Gates, and with all the money he has, he can look right over there and go, that's real money and power. So that kept him in line. But I see so many other people who get to that point, and then it's like, drugs, what do I do?
Right.
So for me, I realized that having a goal is something that's very important.
What goals do you continue to have?
I want to say something. I'm not sure. That's one of the reasons why I'm talking to you. It's like I think everybody wants their life story told. Hopefully it's meaningful. And so I'm still trying to be meaningful, and I'm, hoping that musically I say something that's lasting when it's all done. Hopefully, like I think I like to go to my record collection and pull out this record and go, man, this guy back in the 50s. I just kind of want somebody to do that with me 20 years from now. Man, that guy, check this out.
Right.
So hopefully I can leave some kind of lasting musical statement, something that other people enjoy.
I see that happen every time you and I play together. I experience that, and I look out in the audience, and I see them experiencing that from your contribution.
Thank you. I'm going to keep working at it too, so.
Yeah. You and me both. Yeah, absolutely. Before I get to my closing questions, Ron, just a few more short questions. What inspires you in art and also in life?
It's very cliche, but everything inspires me. I really do get up in the morning and look outside and look at this sky. Of course, my family and my kids do, but I get inspired by so many little things and big things. So I really feel like everything is inspiration. How I take it in, and then how I put it back out is going to be different. But then to me, that's the beauty of taking. That's the cycle. It's like I get inspired, and how am I going to express that? It comes out in different ways.
Can you talk briefly about your commitment to being physically healthy?
I don't know why I think it's important, but I do.
I do as well.
Yeah. So, I'm a marathon runner. I do martial arts. I like to work out every day. I think a strong body also contributes to having a strong mind. I just feel like it's necessary. And so I just make it happen. I'm not perfect, so I slip sometimes, but I'm always getting back on it. So
how are you managing to stay physically in shape during COVID?
I got into bike riding a lot recently. And so I'm just trying to find things that I could do where I'm not in contact with a lot of people. I stopped going to the gym, but I have like all the gear here at my house. Like I said, I go bike riding, running. My dog gets mad at me because I run him too far. Yeah. So yeah,
that's a first in the history of dogs.
So to me, the beauty of running is all you have to do is open the front door and go, and the whole world is out there for you. So it's working out. It's easy for me. It's there. It's available. It's easy to do.
Right. I know that regarding endorsements that you have been with a few companies for a long, long time. You've done clinics for them, as you mentioned, and they've been supportive of you as an artist with gear and technology and everything. What's your philosophy about endorsements?
I play the instruments that I honestly believe are the instruments that can best represent what I'm feeling. And I'm really not luckily for me, I'm not interested in how much money I can get out of it. I really just play the instruments that help me express myself. And I'm fortunate that I'm in that position. For younger people who want endorsements, the main thing that I would say to them is keep in mind that the company, it's a business, and there's a reason why certain people get endorsements, and the reason is basically to help them sell instruments. And so, when you try to go for an endorsement, you have to think about it not only from your perspective of I want stuff for free, but why should they give it to you? And luckily for me, since the 70s, I've been in high profile situations, so. It's a great advertisement for them to have me play their stuff. So my reason for playing, having an endorsement, is because I'm playing on the best gear. Their reason is because I'm a big commercial for them. So just keep it black and white what it is, and both sides could be happy that way.
Right. It becomes mutually beneficial.
Yeah. Yep.
What lessons about art and life have you learned along your journey? And also, how has your perspective changed as you've gotten older? And I'm asking that as we're both the same age. Okay. So there's nothing about you being old. We have a lot of experience.
Yes, we do. We do. And I'm very proud the fact that I'm still here and still doing it.
Yeah.
What have I learned? Like everything I've learned is from this.
Right.
So that's actually a hard question to answer because it all relates. My whole life relates to drums and music. So everything I know is because of this stuff.
And has anything changed in your perspective as you've gotten older?
I would imagine that I'm wiser. Mm-hmm. But as far back as I can remember, I haven't been too wrong on too many things. So my point of view is, I think it's been consistent all along. In life, but especially in music, I don't really pay attention to like, oh, he's the greatest thing since Brit. Okay. And at the same time, I don't pay attention to, oh, he can't play. I try to stay in the middle. That's pretty much how I treat my life. Just try to stay in the middle. It's like, oh, that's nice. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way, but thank you. And I'm happy with where I am. And, my family's happy. I think I'm successful because, what does success mean? But, I think that my responsibility is to take care of my family and to be happy and try to give of myself. And I try to do that. And then I think I do that. So I'm happy.
You just mentioned the word success and that you think you're successful. I think you are too. And in that, I mean that certainly career-wise, but more importantly in family life and in health and physical, spiritual, emotional health. Mm-hmm. You've managed to do a beautiful job at balancing all of those things. I have no idea how because you've been traveling your whole life, but you still... you have been doing that. So that leads to one of my closing questions, which is, since this show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Being a man. Okay. And then, so what does that mean? And foremost, I think being a man means knowing who you are and being responsible, and mostly being responsible to your family, to your community. Also being truthful with yourself and with your family and your community.
That makes good sense. Can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
First, anybody who's trying to get into the music business, remember that it's 2 words. It's music and also business. So even though you're practicing 8 hours a day, make sure you're practicing the business also. As you're putting all this time into your music, but learn the business of the music business. Set goals and strive for those goals. You may steer off and end up somewhere else, but at least if you have something in mind where you're trying to get to, it's going to be easier to get there if you know where you're going. And like I said before, try to stay neutral, no matter how big or how bad it gets. Try to stay even keel, and I think it'll serve you well. So those 3 things.
Those are great tips, Ron. Thank you for sharing those. Before I get to my final question, you spoke about the second half of the music business skill set, which is business. Where did you learn business? Where did you learn how to negotiate for yourself? Where did you learn how to balance being willing to do the same job for $10,000 or $100, the exact same job, possibly in the same week,
right.
How to not let that bring any confusion or lack of clarity into what your worth is.
So the first thing is I always remember that I'm the artist and I do this for the art of it. And then there's the business side. Luckily, I have my wife. It's pretty much as simple as that. Since the beginning, even though I was working when we first met, our early dating used to be her coming to my house and watching me practice for 4 hours. That was our date. Okay, then we would go out to dinner. But it's like, no, I got to get these hours in. And then once I started trying to negotiate my deals and stuff, I realized it's not smart for me to try to do the deal myself. So talk to my manager, my wife, and that way she could say, Oh, he's great. He's going to be great for you. This is all it's going to cost. So, and it's still to this day, she handles my business. And I trust her completely, which I have to because she gets the checks. But so I allowed that party to go to her, and I trust her, and it's worked out well. So that's how it's.
Yeah, it sure has. That's great. My final question that I ask all of my guests is, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh boy, that would take an hour. Because,
right, how much time you got?
There's so many things that I could see now, and that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to be here. And one of the reasons why I do clinics and stuff is because I like seeing these young players who I see myself, and I want to tell them everything. All the stuff that I have all these years that I've learned. This is what you need to know. I want to say all of that stuff. And sometimes it's something really profound. Sometimes it's something really simple. Like this is really dumb. But one thing I wish somebody had said to me way back in the day was, don't put your headphones half on. I mean, as simple as that. I know that I spent years having headphone issues because somebody had told me, put one ear on and one ear off. And right. So that caused me for years to hear two different things in my head and then to try to adjust. I wish somebody had said, bro, put the headphones on and turn the volume up.
Right.
So simple. It would have, but it would have caused me a lot of. It would have gotten rid of so much stress that I went through for years in the studio. It's like, this just sounds weird, Right. So many little things that you never know it's going to affect somebody's career. There's so many things that I would say. Mm-hmm. So that's a hard question.
I love your answer though, and part of the answer is it's a hard question.
Yeah.
It is. I don't quite even frankly know how I would answer that question. It would change depending on the day that you asked me.
Oh, yeah.
This has been such a joy to do this with you. I've been looking forward to it. I wanted to give you closing words if there's anything else that you'd like to say or share with our listeners.
Well, I know sometimes I get really long-winded, so I apologize for that. But it's seriously an honor. Talking with you and being on the show. And I gotta say, most people who know me know that I don't like talking on the phone. But this last 2 hours have flown by really quickly. So I really enjoyed this. And so thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. And I really appreciate you. And also to our audience, Ron and I think I can speak on both of our behalfs. We appreciate you as well. Thanks for joining us. Everybody stay safe.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.